Foul play removes Big Man Blastoise from the field of play. Gliscor re-enters the arena and will be looking for the 1 shield and full Fury Cutter farm down. I didn't fancy that Galarian Weezing matchup in the 2 shield scenario, but in the 1 shield we're in a much better position and we are full sending. Does the opponent respect the damage? Welcome back to the channel. This week I've been pretty poor at uploading for a few reasons which I'll quickly go over. Firstly, I've been working and producing content is taking a toll on my body, so I decided to give myself some much needed time off. Secondly, I haven't really had too much to post about. I've been trying to run some Ultra League stuff and I've been getting super tilted as everything I've been running, I've been getting absolutely clapped. I've lost over 350 elo this week. It's kind of mad to think that Blossom used to be my secret weapon. I've tried to run it twice this week with the buff move of Acid and I've gone horrendously negative. For those trainers wanting to avoid the very limited RPS meta of the Hisui Cup, Ultra League seems to be a place where 2 Pokemon reign supreme, and that would be Zygarde and Bellibolt. Believe it or not, you'd think Blossom would be good into Bellibolt. Bellibolt's ridiculous stat product means they can actually cheese their way through that matchup, which is kind of depressing. When I entered the Go Battle League, when I ran today's team, I had one thing in mind: do not lose to Bellibolt and do not lose to Zygarde. I thought, what better time than to bust out one of the oldest Shadow Pokemon that I ever powered up. Way back in Season 7, this Gliscor that I'm using today was featured on Home Slice Henry's channel. It was also running Fury Cutter back then because this was long before Wing Attack got buffed, then nerfed, etc. Gliscor does reasonably well into both Zygarde and Bellibolt, but we're not just going to run 1 Pokemon that handles them, we're going to run 2. I think Galarian Weezing looks phenomenal in this meta. The issue running these 2 together is that Lapras is going to be my dad. So rounding today's team off, we've got Big Man Blastoise. With all that being said, without any further ado, let's get into the battles. And in game 1, we lead Shadow Gliscor into Skeledirge. A type advantage matchup, as you would think a ground type should beat a fire type. We're using Fury Cutter as a quick move, which are double resisted and non-stab. The opponent fire off the Torch Song, and I'm Fourteenth end of the nuke. Ball in the opponent's court. Earthquake sneaks through 2 Protect Shield, a classic case of fuck about and find out. The opponent sends out Gliscor. Rather than concede a farm down, we make the pivot into today's save switch, a Big Man Blastoise. The opponent fire off the X-Scissor. The opponent's already been nuked once, and once again, we are full sending. Does the opponent respect the damage? They do not. Yet another big boom. Holy cow. The opponent looking to call baits. Clearly never heard of me, as I'm only a small content creator, but if you have heard of me, I'd anticipate a shield there, as I am not a fan of baiting. Speaking of which, Como also doesn't shield the Skull Bash. We send out G-Weezy. The opponent concedes the match, and we're off to a 1-0 start. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, as if by magic, the world's most annoying Pokemon appears on my screen. The opponent save switch into Dragonite. That Bellibolt matchup is actually kind of scuffed, especially if they want to invest Protect Shield. I attempt to catch a Dragon Claw onto Galarian Weezing. The opponent farm up, looking to bait a Hurricane. They haven't got it, and they concede the match. Heading into the next battle. Oh boy, we see Salazzle in the lead. This is much like the Skeledirge matchup. You'd anticipate this being a good matchup for the ground type, but once again, my Fury Cutters are double resisted, as both Poison and Fire do resist Bug. I'm just going to settle for an Aerial Ace here, as this thing is insanely glassy, and if I'm being brutally honest, I'd just like to get off some chip damage. I always tell people, do as I say and not as I do. I think playing to CMP here is too risky. Thankfully, the opponent was horny for that debuff. They do fire off the Poison Fang, which we are able to survive, fire off the Aerial Ace, forcing the final Protect Shield. However, if they would have actually took the extra Incinerate there, it would have been a very tough position. Speaking of tough positions, a Blastoise without Ice Beam isn't particularly great into Virizion. Skull Bash does decent damage, but you do need to double Skull Bash to remove Virizion from the field of play. I anticipated the opponent looking for that full double kick farm down, tried to fire off the Hydro Cannon, which would have put them into perfect Fairy Wind farm down range, but the opponent actually denied my energy. Weezing needs to do so much heavy lifting here. Leaf Blade is resisted. The opponent, rather than concede a farm down, make a very heads up play and send back out Salazzle. They instantly debuff me, and these Incinerates are now going to shred through my HP. We're going to fire off a Brutal Swing. Decent damage, but not enough to get the job done. We then make the catch back onto Gliscor and give ourselves a sliver of hope at winning this battle. I'm going to fire off 1 here and the Brutal Swing, meaning that Incinerate will not register, but Weezing is already so low on HP. I was scratching my head thinking, what the heck can we beat? The opponent then sends out Virizion. Okay, they're going to give me a huge amount of energy. Potentially it's going to be Guzzlord in the back. That's probably the only thing you can have in the back where you're willing to send Virizion out rather than reveal your third. That is a Guzzlord. The question now becomes, Our two sludges, with enough double super effective fairy winds, enough to knock out. I farm up as much as I physically can, fire off the sludge, the opponent survives on fractional HP, and finally going to remove Weezing from the field of play. GG's to that opponent. In the next battle, we see Annihilape in the lead position. You can see why when Wing Attack got buffed, everyone switched over to Wing Attack as opposed to Fury Cutters. As all the matchups you've got type advantage into, these Fury Cutters are hitting for resisted, or in this case, once again, for the third consecutive battle, double resisted. The Aerial Ace does hit for super effective, but it is a move I always call Aerial Ass, and it didn't do too much to Annihilape. We are able to outpace the second one, forcing the first Protect Shield of the game. Gliscor's got me a shield advantage. I'm more than happy with Gliscor's contribution. We've got a very good check for Annihilape in the form of Galarian Weezing. If the opponent continues to stay in, I'm just going to go for the one shield, a full Fairy Wind farm down, and this energy is usually pretty universally useful. We're going to shield up the double boosted Rage Fist, get that full Fairy Wind farm down, leaving a whole heap of energy. The opponent sends out Licky, a far too thicky, a Pokemon I thought was a myth. I haven't seen this thing since rollout got nerfed. One Fairy Wind and the next Sludge, maintaining disciplined fast move timing. I'm then going to throw one further Fairy Wind, bank the Brutal Swing, and pivot into Big Man Blastoise. I'm anticipating whatever's in the back is going to be weak into Weezing. Hence the opponent sent out Licky and just tried to get off some chip damage, going straight for a Body Slam. Blastoise more than happy to tank back-to-back Body Slams. I actually don't know when CMP here, so I'm going to play it safe, throw one rollout before the opponent gets to the next Body Slam, and Hydro Cannon removes them from the field of play. Out comes Tentacruel. Not entirely sure we wouldn't send out Tentacruel to absorb Weezing's energy rather than Licky, but I'm not complaining. Once again, we full send the Skull Bash. The Skull Bash is able to land. We're just going to go for some chip damage. Firing off this Hydro Cannon forces the opponent's final protection, and they're going to get a massive farm down. I think my lose con here is potentially if they've got Acid Spray. I shield an Acid Spray and the Scald knocks out. So we're just going to no-shield the first move. If they've got Blizzard, that would also pick up the one-hit KO, but thankfully it's just the Scald. We withstand the damage, resisted, Fairy Wind farm down, and take that game. In the next battle, we found ourselves a problem. When I put this team together, I was well aware that Lapras would be a huge headache and very difficult to deal with. I think here, I've made a mistake. I tried to catch a Sparkling Aria, but I think logically the opponent would always build up to the Ice Beam before potentially baiting. So I think a much more optimal way of playing the opening matchup would be throwing 14 Fury Cutters as opposed to 12. We say switch into Blastoise and out comes Florges. As the opponent stayed in to farm up yet more energy than Lapras, this is definitely a matchup we can flip. We tank the first Trailblaze, shield the second, throw one roller and the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon removes them from the field of play. Back out comes Lapras and they do look to deny my energy. This Lapras is still a huge headache. I'm not really sure what I want to do yet. I'm going to send back out Gliscor. I'm just going to fire off an Aerial Ace, recognising Lapras is very bulky and this likely goes unshielded, getting him closer and closer to range where Galarian Weezing can clean up. Once again, I attempt a Sparkling Aria catch, and again I'm unsuccessful. Weezing fires off the Sludge. Sludge also goes unshielded. I can't really afford to go down 2-0 shields. We're going to tank the Sparkling Aria. The opponent is doubled up, and I've got a decision to make. Last second invest to protect shield. Out comes Typhlosion, and this game is certainly going to end in the defeat. We're going to fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing forced to protect shield. Gliscor is energy dry. I recognise I simply cannot win the match, and I am going to resign. Heading into the next battle, we see Guzzlord in the lead position. Finally a lead where Fury Cutter is actually advantageous. The opponent saves switch into Kentucky Fried Chicken, Bird of Death, and out comes Big Man Blastoise. The opponent fire off the Fly. Blastoise withstands the damage, 3 rollouts and the Hydro Cannon, only giving the opponent 1 free turn. I doubt the opponent shields. If they shield, I could just one shield and fully roll out farm them down. The opponent recognises switch advantage has been lost. Send back out Guzzlord. Guzzlord going to be greeted with the Skull Bash. Skull Bash goes unshielded and instantly puts them below half health. I send out Galarian Weezing and out comes Skeledirge. Skeledirge, somewhat of a problematic Pokemon, especially with 2 shields to hide behind, but Weezing has access to Brutal Swing, which will be super effective, and it takes essentially 2 Brutal Swings and about 10 Fairy Winds to knock them out. Opponent fire off the Torch Song. I'm not going to say 2 shields for next season. I know there's a Torch Song, but I'm just shielding everything at this point. We fire off the next Brutal Swing, 2 further Fairy Winds and the next Brutal Swing, using a 2-turn move into a 5-turn move. Nice and simple. Ideally, you want to throw 2 or 7 quick moves. I eventually make the pivot into Gliscor. Can I reach the Earthquake before the next Torch Song? Unfortunately, I cannot, so I'm going to set off with the Aerial Ace, hoping Aerial Ace isn't an arse move and picks up the knockout. Unfortunately, it does not, but it leaves him on fractional HP. The opponent do need to Shadow Ball to pick up a knockout Torch Song. Doesn't get the job done. Back out comes Guzzlord. Guzzlord unable to snipe. Gliscor reaches the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace moves them from the field of play. And we're going to be able to resist the Fury Cutter farm down Skeledirge and take that game. In the next battle, we see Typhlosion in the lead position. It's interesting that the opponent switched out, as I'd much rather be Typhlosion than Gliscor, as they do resist the Fury Cutters. They say switch into Bellibolt. They fire off the Parabolic Charge. I'm going to bank the energy and make the pivot into Galarian Weezing. It's very nice to have a Sucker Punch resist, especially with just how bloody common this annoying Bellibolt is. Galarian Mulch is also pretty common, another very favourable matchup for Galarian Weezing. Weezing going to fire off as many sludges as I physically can. The opponent invests a Protect Shield and they've got a boatload of energy. If this is a Zap Cannon, they can pick up the one-hit KO. The opponent full send the nuke. Fair play, Weezing straight in and straight out. I'm going to send back out Gliscor, but I'm going to have to full send an Earthquake, which is kind of upsetting as it is a very expensive move. But Earthquake, even with boosted defense, will be picking up the knockout. If Typhlosion returns, I'm going to send up Big Man Blastoise with that shield advantage and look to start getting energy. The opponent actually sends out Zygarde. Again, we're going to full send the Earthquake. If this goes unshielded, it'll do around half the health, and then it is Big Man Blastoise time. Zygarde and Bellibolt on the same team. These are the sort of teams that are really annoying me the other day, and I certainly don't want to lose. The opponent's already full sent a Zap Cannon, so I will respect the big move. They go for the Crunch bait, which is a nice bait on their part. However, they don't debuff my defense, which is nice for me. We fire off the Hydro Cannon. The Hydro Cannon gets them into the red, and this can only be a Crunch, which is an easy tank for the big man. Blastoise withstands the damage. The opponent then pivot out into Typhlosion, 3 rollouts, and the first Hydro Cannon. And Big Man Blastoise is smelling blood in the water. Hydro Cannon forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. 1 roller and the next Hydro Cannon. Down goes Typhlosion. We pivot into Gliscor. We Fury Cutter farm down Zygarde and take that game. In the next battle, we see another scuffed matchup. The opponent pivots out into Primeape. They go straight for a Rage Fist, so I can tank 1. 1 isn't too threatening. What I'm going to do here is stay in, force a Protect Shield, or just get off big damage with the Aerial Ace, and then make the pivot into Galarian Weezing. Aerial Ace, force the Protect Shield. Weezing hits the field of play. Again, you're not going to shield this one. It is 1 stage boosted, but Rage Fist, non-stab, and not all that threatening. As the opponent's already down 1 Protect Shield, I waste no time. Go straight for the Sludge. I'm looking to move Primeape from the field of play. Down goes Primeape, and back out comes Dragalge. This is definitely another scuffed matchup. They're a dragon, we're a fairy. But our sub-poison typing means that these asses are hitting me for neutral, and quite a lot of neutral damage at that. The Fairy Winds are also neutral. Brutal Swing, neutral again. Doesn't do too much, but the opponent recognise they're not going to be able to acid farm down and do look to dump energy. We've managed to put in a lot of work with Weezing, almost removing 2 Pokemon from the field of play. I send out Blastoise, hope the opponent's spamming the Aqua Tail. They are not, so I'm going to respect an Outrage. The opponent full sends the Outrage, which is a huge shield invested from me, and out comes Moltres. I'm not even looking to bait an Ice Beam, I just want some damage. The opponent actually shield the Hydro Cannon, we then make the pivot into Gliscor. Gliscor hitting for neutral with the Fury Cutters, and the Aerial Ace is neutral as well, and does get them below half health. The opponent going to farm up as much as they physically can. And at this point, Blastoise is my win con. Fly picks up the knockout. The opponent here goes straight for a Fly, but I am going to shield this move. I can potentially roll out, farm them down, or if not, at least get towards the back-to-back. The opponent going to try to make a catch attempt unsuccessful, and just like that, this game is signed, sealed, and delivered. The opponent only going to reach a non-stab Aqua Tail, does absolutely nothing. Blastoise fully roll out, farms down, leaving with that big Skull Bash. Super necessary, of course, on the low health Moltres, and when we finally stop them lagging, probably because the opponent rage quit, we will be able to take that game. In the next battle, we see Dustox in the lead position. Bug is such a god-awful offensive typing, man. It's resisted by 7 typings, and all 7 of them are pretty common. We're going to bank the energy, make the pivot and the catch onto Big Man Blastoise, sneaking the rollout in the process. My Blastoise save switch is answered by a shiny Guzzlord. They go straight for a Dragon Claw Brutal Swing, which won't be lethal, so we withstand the damage, and we're going to full send the Skull Bash, looking to get off some meaningful damage. Skull Bash goes unshielded. Blastoise going to reach the Hydro Cannon. The opponent now has a decision to make. The rollouts have put him in Hydro Cannon range. Best case scenario for me is a shield invested, and the opponent does exactly that. I've already got energy banked on my lead. I can now get energy banked on my 3rd Pokemon as well. We send out Weezing. Even if the opponent's got Sludge Bomb, it's non-stab, only neutral, they can enjoy themselves. They fire off the Crunch. Crunch doesn't do much of anything, and we're able to get that full Fairy Wind farm down. The opponent sends out Cresselia, a Pokemon I haven't seen in forever, man. Holy moly, this thing used to be so common for those who used to play in the early seasons. Like seasons, say, 1 to 10. It was one of the best Pokemon in the meta. It's definitely fallen off now. Back in Cresselia's peak, Moonblast had a 30% attack drop chance. It was so annoying. That's like primetime Drapion. Those of you OGs will know exactly what I'm talking about. This thing was a menace. This opponent is running Future Sight, which is a huge shield invested for me. We're just going to fire off Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing and look to whittle away this Cresselia's never-ending HP. Brutal Swing, able to land. We'll then make the pivot and the catch onto Gliscor. Although Future Sight is potentially the hardest hitting move left in the game, so I do invest a Protect Shield, baiting back out Dust Noir. I didn't think double Aerial Ace would be lethal. Potentially it would have been, but I'm going to play it safe, go for the Aerial Ace and the Earthquake combination. The opponent going to fire off the Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch doesn't get the job done. Gliscor going to reach the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace will be moving Dust Noir from the field of play. Cresselia going to die to a couple of Fury Cutters, and we take that game. In the next battle, we found ourselves another problem, and they're on Powder Snow as well. Holy cow, man, this thing is definitely going to provide me somewhat of an issue. We save switch into Blastoise, and the opponent answers with their own Blastoise. We're going to full send the Skull Bash, forcing the first protection of the game. That's definitely good for me. If we can get some shields away from the opponent, potentially we can Earthquake Sonic the Hedgehog later. As we have an energy lead, we was able to get off our Skull Bash first, buffing up our defense, meaning their Skull Bash didn't do too much to us. We reached yet another Skull Bash, putting the opponent down to around a third health, and you still need to Skull Bash Trainer. I promise Hydro Cannon isn't going to get the job done. The opponent fires off the Hydro Cannon, Blastoise withstands the damage. Potentially I could have thrown the Hydro Cannon, looked to flip switch, but I think then I just feed Sonic more energy, so I'm actually happy the opponent's dumped all of their energy. I think my best path forward here is send out Gliscor, go for the one shield, full Fury Cutter farm down. Definitely then we're able to threaten an Earthquake on the return in Sonic. Gliscor looks for the farm down, just about able to get it. They've got an Ice Punch banked. We look to make the catch onto Weezing, and look at this play. I think the opponent might have 5-8'd me here. Anticipating me trying to make a catch, something that does resist ice. We end up catching a super effective move. You've got to be kidding me. Out comes Skeledirge, and this looks like a very tough game to win. Here, I wasn't sure I survived the Incinerate, so I throw one Fairy Wind and the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing isn't quite lethal, and the opponent leaves for a charge move. I'm kind of obliged to shield this up. The question is, can we Fury Cutter farm down before they reach another move? Gliscor! Oh, that's heartbreaking, man. Fury Cutter is great for energy generation, but being resisted by so many typings makes it so awkward to use. We force in the Earthquake. If I would have actually been able to Fury Cutter farm down before the Torch Songs reached, potentially we could have won, but it wasn't meant to be. GG's to that opponent. In the next battle, once again, we see Lapras in the lead position. Again, I really think I should let the opponent farm up to an Ice Beam before eventually making the pivot out. Potentially this opponent's got Skull Bash. They do stay into Chip and Dip. They actually fire off the Sparkling Aria, looking to force a Protect Shield, but I am not biting. Out comes Cradiddy. I did throw an alignment, so don't be a potato like me. Throw an odd number. So 1 or 3 would have been better, not the 2 that I threw. We're actually able to force a Protect Shield, which is like best case scenario. We land the next Hydro Cannon. And if the opponent Rock Tomb here, we might actually reach one further Hydro Cannon. The opponent does indeed fire off the Rock Tomb. Blastoise withstands the damage and is actually getting a lot of value in this battle. I think Blastoise is such an unsung hero in the Ultra League. Even though debuffed Hydro Cannon has put this Cradiddy in a range where we can just tank whatever they throw, Fury Cutter farm down, leave a whole heap of energy. The issue is we're going to be debuffed, which is kind of annoying, so I think I'm going to instantly reset that debuff and pivot into Galarian Weezing with a 2-to-1 shield advantage. I am going to instantly give up one of them Protect Shields. We don't know what's in the back. We might need Weezing to do a lot of heavy lifting. The opponent tries to make a Sludge catch onto Talonflame, but Sludge is the move I want to throw anyway, but thankfully I held my energy and they didn't sneak a free Incinerate. Fire off first Sludge, Weezing able to reach the next Sludge. This won't be lethal, but will leave him insanely low. I've got 100 energy on Gliscor, so I think Gliscor should carry me home. The opponent fire off the Fly. We're able to Fairy Wind farm down. I did have a Brutal Swing bank, but it's kind of neither here nor there. Psywave will register first and will knock me out. Back out comes Lapras. We full send the Earthquake, and now it's going to be a fast move beatdown. Can we get the Fury Cutter farm down before they reach the double charge move? Yes, we can, and Lapras is no longer my dad. GG's to that opponent. In the next battle, we see another terrifying Pokemon. Gliscor was actually once a very meta, because flying coverage in Ultra League is kind of nice. It would be neutral here as opposed to my resisted Fury Cutters. I'm definitely going to stay in as Galarian Weezing wants no part of this Scizor. We fire off the Aerial Ace, force a Protect Shield, which is like best case scenario. The opponent looks to deny my next move, which is kind of fine for me, as long as I don't boost, and thankfully they don't boost. We're now going to send out Big Man Blastoise. I could throw this Hydro Cannon instantly and look to remove them from the field of play, but I'm actually more than happy just to get a huge energy lead. We correctly shot the Trailblade, and then I can throw 3 further rollouts and the Hydro Cannon. At this point I'm at like 100 energy. Blastoise fires off the Hydro Cannon, removing Scizor from the field of play. What wants to see loaded Blastoise? The opponent thinking about what they want to send out. They send out Annihilape, one roller, and the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon forces the Protect Shield, one further roller, and the next Hydro Cannon, and this should put them into Brutal Swing range. Rather than concede a farm down, we make the pivot into Galarian Weezing. The opponent stays in, looking to fire off a charge move. They're not boosted, Rage Fist isn't that threatening. We tank the damage, and out comes the opposing big man Blastoise. Of course, Sludge is the correct move to throw here. Sludge gets same type attack bonus and a very good move. Brutal Swing, just more of a cheap coverage move and good into them common ghost types. Weezing going to invest the final protection here. I'm going to throw one Fairy Wind and the Sludge. Hopefully this Sludge is lethal. If it's not, the opponent is now receiving the energy for the next Hydro Cannon. My switch time is up. My switch timers are misaligned and I'm able to make the catch. I think the catch was super unnecessary. I could have just fired off a Brutal Swing, removing Blastoise from the field of play and then outpaced the Annihilate. But it is what it is. Regardless of what I do, we are able to take that game. GG's that opponent. Your boy Jamie Finn out here looking for his own lose con. Heading into the next battle. Gliscor into Clefable. You already know what I'm thinking. Another matchup where Fury Cutter is doing absolutely nothing for me. It generates good energy, but applying literally no fast move pressure. I bank the energy, make the catch onto Blastoise there. I could have switched out a turn earlier. I would have snuck a free rollout. But it is what it is. The opponent went for a Swift Bait that did laughable damage. The opponent stays in, fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast does substantial damage. The opponent continued to stay in. So we are going to fire off a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon, decent damage. And the opponent isn't going to be able to Fairy Wind farm me down. They actually tried to snipe with Greninja. Greninja going to be greeted with the Hydro Cannon. The Hydro Cannon is resisted, but this thing's so bloody glassy, man. Everything does massive damage to him. I don't reveal my third yet, so I'm going to send out Gliscor. The opponent, of course, bait me with a Night Slash, you absolute savage. I'm going to overfarm, fire off the Aerial from this range, all moving them from the field of play. But the opponent actually looked like they're willing to invest Protect Shields. We're able to outpace the next Aerial. The opponent now has a decision to make. I'm calling the opponent's going to Night Slash bait me again and look to force my final Protect Shield. So we go for a very risky catch, catching onto Weezing. Let's go. This opponent's only thrown 4 charges, with 3 of them in baits. A Swift Bait, double Night Slash bait. Holy crap, man. So many poor cats losing their lives today. We correctly shot the Hydro Cannon. Out comes Mandibars. Uh-oh, trainer, you're in trouble. Weezing completely core breaking the remainder of the team. In fairness, good into all 3 Pokemon. The opponent fire off the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace doesn't do much of anything. Weezing, 1 Fairy Wind and the next Sludge. Sludge goes unshielded, rocking them into the red health range. The opponent going to fire off yet another Aerial Ace, but this simply will not cut it. I'm going to bank the charge move, make the pivot into Gliscor. The opponent pivots out into Clefable. They do need to full send a Moonblast to knock me out. I was committing to the Earthquake. A bit unnecessary, but we know Weezing's going to clean up. Fairy Winds not going to cut it. We farm up. Play 2 CMP. Weezing going to remove Clefable from the field of play with 1 Fairy Wind off the next Sludge. And that is going to be all she wrote. GG's to that opponent. Once again, I think a much easier part of it would be double Aerial Ace, 1 Aerial Ace knocking out Clefable and 1 Aerial Ace knocking out Mandibars. In the next battle, we see Galarian Weezing in the lead position. Again, Fury Cutters not only resisted, but double resisted. So a much better matchup, despite me being a ground type when we can remove some shields off the opponent. We save switch into Big Man Blastoise, baiting out Shadow Malamar. Despite the bug buff, I think this thing is still legit this season. It looks like we're going to get that shield advantage we're desperate for. Firing off the Hydro Cannon, forcing the first Protect Shield of the game. Very, very good fast move timing for my opponent. Throwing 1 turn before I receive the energy for Hydro Cannon, which means I can't shield. Because if I shield, look to get off my Hydro Cannon, I just lose CMP. I'm more than happy to concede switch advantage. I can send out Gliscor now. Go for the 1 shield, full Fury Cutter farm down, and then if Weezing wants to return, now we're in the 1-to-1 shield, I feel a bit more happy about the situation. We full send, does the opponent respect the damage? They do not get that Weezing off my screen. Out comes Gastrodon, and we will be emerging victorious. Heading into the next battle. What the heck is this? Ice Fang Feraligatr, holy crap. It took me a while to switch out, like 2 Ice Fangs did ridiculous damage. I should have switched quicker. We send out Blastoise, the opponent fire off the Crunch, simply not going to cut it. Blastoise going to full send the Skull Bash ball in the opponent's court. Skull Bash sneaks through 2 Protect Shields, removing Feraligatr from the field of play. Back out comes Golurk. The rollouts might be resisted, but Hydro Cannon would pretty much pick up a 1-shot. Opponent fully try and mudslap farm me down, which they do. Blastoise will not be denied, and once again completely stealing the show. The opponent opted double shield to keep Golurk around. If they've got like Poltergeist or something, they can enjoy themselves. We call it's just going to be a Shadow Punch, and thankfully it is. Despite Weezing having access to Brutal Swing, I don't really fancy the Mud Slap damage, so I'm going to invest to Protect You. The opponent then pivots into Guzzlord, and this one looks like RPS for the win. The opponent's got a Sludge Bomb. It's going to only do around half. They can enjoy themselves. The opponent fire off the Sludge. Non-stab, just not going to cut it. 4 Fairy Winds and the Sludge. Fairy Winds are double super effective. With Fairy Wind them into Sludge Rain, back out comes Golurk. Golurk going to be greeted with the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing, not quite enough to pick up the one-hit KO. So we're going to fire off that BM Sludge. Sorry, not sorry. And we take that game. GG's to that opponent. Yet again, yet more lag with another Rage Quit to end today's video. You love to see it. And that is just about going to wrap things up for today's video. Whilst Gliscor is now generating energy again, very nice. 4 EPT, Fury Cutter, not really a great move in the Ultra League. There are plenty of Dark type, but there's so many things that resist it. I think it's certainly improved, but perhaps not a must build. I think both Galarian Weezing and Blastoise are phenomenal though. They are 2 Pokemon I 100% recommend you investing your resources in. So if you're enjoying the content, smash that like button. If you're new, consider subscribing. If you like your battles featured on my channel, a link to a battle submission form is down below. And as always, a huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.